Hello. I wanted to talk about a topic that comes up depending on where you're at in your recovery. But for me, what comes up on an annual basis now, and that is, how did you do it? Those of us in recovery know that every 30 days, 60, 90, half year, and then annual birthdays of celebrating our sobriety date, we're asked how we did it, how we got through. Well, I actually enjoy sharing this story in my group when it does come up, because I think it's so important as a part of my recovery and anyone who is really ready to do it different. For me, that was starting off with 90 meetings in 90 days. The reason for that, as explained in the big book and the many other books, is because this is a disease and it's spent years messing with our heads. There are pathways that are used on a regular basis when we're using, and they react like that to our stimuli, and it sets us off. And for me, I understood I needed to break those pathways and change them. And in order to do that, I had to go to meetings. I had to understand my disease. I had to understand how it worked. I needed to understand how I could do it differently. So one of the things we talk about in group is, especially those who start off and who choose to do the 90 and 90, is fake it till you make it. I've said this a couple times in my posts. And that basically means keep going, even though it hasn't sunk in, if it hasn't reached that point where it makes sense to you yet, just keep on going. You just keep on going. And so I did. And there were times when I thought it would be impossible to get to a meeting every single day. Especially when I was trying to work full-time as well, and hide my hitting bottom, my years of addiction, and my trying to get clean from my job because I was terrified of losing my life support. To me, that was a salary and being able to survive, to live. But you know, when it came right down to it, I was so ready to make the change. I was so ready to do it different that, as hard as it was, in my mind, it's actually really easy. And I found that I could actually go to 2 meetings in a day, and often did, because I needed the safety of that meeting room more than anything else in my life at that time. And how I did that, I had my core group that I went to, and mostly those were the evening meetings. If I had a conflict with work and I was going to stay late to finish up a project and I had no way out of it, I knew, doing just a little bit of research, seriously, it was so easy. I knew there was a meeting literally a block behind my building, and they had a noon meeting every single day of the week. It wasn't my core addiction, but that didn't matter. Because going into a 12-step meeting period, you're still learning about recovery, you're still hearing from those in recovery, you're still listening, and for me, getting all that in and processing it and listening, it didn't take long where I felt like I was doing something. I wasn't faking it to make it anymore. I was actually doing something. And as the shame and the ugliness and everything I felt inside about the years of addiction and what I did to myself began to feel a sense of safety within the confines of a meeting room, I began to speak up in meetings and talk. And the more I talked, the better I felt. And the better I felt, the more I wanted to talk. And the more I wanted to talk, the better I felt. And it's just a chain reaction, and it continues and continues and continues. And before long, I was chairing meetings myself. Now, I had to wait 6 months to ensure I had enough sobriety time before I could chair a meeting. But it just gave a whole new dimension to sharing. Anyway, back on 90 and 90. So, made my 90 and 90 with no problem. By the time I got to 90 days, I loved it so much, I actually stuck with it. 1 meeting a day, 1 meeting a day, 1 meeting a day. And again, sometimes 2 meetings a day. It just depends on what you feel you need. For me, there were times during the day where I still got stressed so much that I needed to go over to that new meeting that was literally right behind where I worked. It could not have worked out more conveniently. And I ended up going to 120 meetings in 120 days. Actually, more counting all the doubles, but in essence, 120 and 120. And that pattern of addiction in my head, that disease that had taken over my pathways, began to crumble. And I understood how it worked in my head. And I understood what I needed to do to change the course of that disease and to make my life better. And another element that made this happen, this recovery for me, how I did it, was honesty. If I spoke up in a meeting, I didn't give a sugar-coated account of anything. When I would listen to people share some of the most horrible things that had been done over the course of their own addiction, I was just in awe of the authenticity of the sharing. And I saw how it changed their lives visibly. It was changing their lives as they were speaking that truth. Literally, I'm not kidding, right in front of your face, you can see the changes on their face as they release these shameful secrets, these horrid things that they did in the course of their addiction or their alcoholism, whatever it was that brought them to that room. And the bonding that happens when that kind of sharing goes on is just incredible. It's a truth that is unimaginable, and going to meetings and being honest, that's how I did it. As I got further on into the program, I made adjustments. And I, again, found what works for me, and I'll talk about that next time. For now, I'm the Agnostic Addict, and I pray that you find your own truth and keep searching for it. Thank you.